He had taken care of the bull since it was a calf, yet today, something snapped. In a terrifying instant, the massive beast lunged, slamming the farmer against the wooden wall, its horns trapping him with nowhere to escape. But what happened in the next moments shocked everyone. Who witnessed it? The morning began like any other on the old family farm, quiet, golden, and peaceful. A soft breeze drifted through the open fields, carrying the smell of fresh hay and warm earth. The farmer, Thomas, wiped his hands on his worn trousers as he stepped out of the barn, stretching his back after another early start. For him, this life wasn't just routine, it was comfort, something he had lived and breathed since childhood. Not far from the barn stood Buck, the massive bull Thomas had raised from a fragile calf. Over the years, Buck had grown into a powerful, intimidating creature, yet Thomas never saw him as a threat. He believed their bond was unbreakable, a trust built through years of feeding, grooming, and calming the animal during storms. Buck had never shown aggression strong enough to concern him. As Thomas carried a bucket of water toward the trough, he hummed softly, unaware of the tension quietly building behind him. Buck pawed at the ground, snorting in a way Thomas didn't immediately recognize. The farmer glanced over with a faint smile, assuming it was nothing more than impatience for breakfast. But the peace of that morning was already cracking, he just didn't know it yet. Thomas had barely set the bucket down when a strange silence settled over the barnyard, an eerie pause that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He turned slightly, expecting to see Buck waiting calmly like always. Instead, he found the bull frozen, muscles tense, eyes locked onto him with a wildness he had never seen before. Before Thomas could make sense of it, Buck let out a deep guttural bellow that shook the air. The sound hit Thomas like a warning shot, but he had no time to react. In a blur of dark muscle and flying dust, the bull charged. The ground trembled beneath each thunderous hoof step. Thomas spun to run, but Buck reached him in seconds. The impact slammed him into the wooden wall with bone-rattling force. Pain shot through his back as the world blurred. Buck's massive horns struck the boards on either side of his head, pinning him so tightly he could barely move. Splinters cracked and rained down near his shoulders. Thomas gasped, trying to pull free, but the bull pressed harder, snorting hot breath against his chest. He could feel the raw power of the animal pulsing inches away, unpredictable and terrifying. Dust swirled around them as the barnyard erupted into chaotic echoes, snorts, thudding hooves, and Thomas's shallow, panicked breaths. For the first time in years, fear wrapped around him like a tightening rope. Something had triggered Buck, something Thomas didn't yet understand. And now, escape seemed impossible. Thomas's heartbeat pounded so violently he could feel it echoing in his throat. Trapped between the bull's horns and the rough wooden wall, every breath hurt, every second stretched into something unbearable. He tried to push against Buck's massive head, but the animal didn't budge. Its muscles felt like solid stone beneath his trembling hands. "Easy, boy, easy," Thomas whispered, hoping the familiar tone might calm him. But Buck's ears twitched restlessly, and his hooves scraped the ground with a warning rhythm. The bull wasn't simply angry, he was frightened, confused, overwhelmed by something Thomas couldn't yet see. Desperation surged through him. He braced his boots against the hay-covered ground and pushed with all his strength. For a moment, he felt a tiny shift, then Buck thrust forward again, jamming Thomas back into place. Pain exploded across his ribs. His vision flickered. Dust filled the air, clinging to the sweat on his skin. Thomas tried calling out for help, but his voice came out hoarse, barely louder than a strained whisper. The barnyard felt empty, no workers nearby, no family within earshot. He was alone with a terrified, unpredictable beast capable of ending his life in seconds. Buck's snout pressed closer, his hot breath hitting Thomas's chest in rapid bursts. The bull's eyes darted around wildly, as if fighting an invisible enemy. Thomas realized then that brute strength wouldn't save him. If he didn't stay calm, if he didn't think, this moment could very well be his last. Just when Thomas felt his strength slipping away, a sharp whistle cut through the chaos. Buck's ears twitched, his massive head pausing for the first time since the attack. Thomas barely managed to lift his eyes, and saw Jake, the neighboring farmer, sprinting toward them from across the yard. Jake had come by to return a borrowed tool, completely unaware of the terrifying scene he was walking into. But the moment he saw Buck pinning Thomas against the wall, instinct took over. He grabbed a long rake leaning near the barn door and approached cautiously, calling the bull's name in a steady, commanding tone. "Buck. Back off. Easy, boy, easy." Buck swung his head toward the voice, loosening the pressure just enough for Thomas to breathe. Jake tapped the rake gently against the ground, using calm movements to draw the bull's attention away. For a tense second, Thomas feared Buck might charge again. But instead, the bull hesitated, confused, torn between fear and familiarity. That hesitation was everything. Jake stepped closer, keeping his voice low and firm. Slowly, Buck shifted sideways, pulling his horns free from the wall. Thomas dropped to his knees, gasping, as the bull finally backed away. As Thomas steadied himself on shaky legs, Jake kept Buck at a safe distance, watching the animal closely. The bull paced in restless circles, snorting and tossing his head, not with anger, but with distress. Something was clearly wrong. Thomas wiped the dust from his face and finally noticed what he had missed earlier, a deep, fresh wound along Buck's hind leg, hidden beneath matted fur and dried blood. Jake saw it too. "Thomas, he's hurt. Badly." Suddenly everything made sense. The unusual snorting, the tension, the fear in Buck's eyes, it wasn't aggression. It was panic. Something had injured him, and in his pain and confusion, he reacted the only way an animal knew how, by defending himself against the nearest movement. Thomas felt his heart drop. The bull hadn't attacked out of betrayal. He had cried out for help the only way he could. The guilt hit Thomas harder than the wall ever did. They approached cautiously, speaking softly. As Jake distracted Buck, Thomas knelt to inspect the wound. A sharp piece of broken fence wire was still tangled around the leg, cutting deeper with every step. The attack hadn't been an act of rage. It had been a desperate plea for relief. With Jake's help, Thomas carefully freed Buck from the tangled wire, speaking softly to keep him calm. The bull trembled but didn't resist. The moment the wire slipped off, Buck let out a low, exhausted groan, a sound that felt more like gratitude than pain. Thomas gently patted his shoulder, realizing how close they had both come to tragedy. Over the next few days, Buck healed, and the bond between man and animal grew even stronger. But Thomas carried a new understanding now. Even the gentlest creatures can react unpredictably when scared or hurting. It wasn't malice that pinned him to the wall, it was panic. Standing in the barnyard a week later, watching Buck graze peacefully, Thomas felt grateful for a second chance. His message to others was simple but powerful. Respect every animal. Listen before assuming. And never ignore the silent signs of pain.